All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Picture this. You're standing at the absolute bottom of the world, the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station. Outside that triple-paned glass, it is a staggering minus 78 degrees Celsius, and the Antarctic night is just absolute. The year is 2025. Dr. James Winters, a geophysicist, has been awake for 36 hours straight, just staring at data that, frankly, shouldn't even exist. He's literally watching the world end. Not with some massive explosion, but with this deep, low hum he can feel all the way in his back molars.
So, Dr. Winters was monitoring the station's crown jewel. It's this incredibly sensitive instrument called the squid array, and it's designed to catch the tiniest, faintest whispers in Earth's magnetic field. But for 21 days, the array hadn't been whispering at all. It had been screaming. Winters ran every diagnostic you could think of. He blamed the freezing temperatures, the wiring, a software glitch. He even tore down the stack twice, just hunting for a mistake. But then he was forced into this terrifying realization. The instruments weren't failing. The Earth was. The planet's invisible shield, the magnetic force that deflects solar radiation and basically allows modern civilization to exist, was plunging at a rate that was mathematically insane. Suddenly, humanity's entire infrastructure was utterly exposed.
Which brings us to the overarching mystery of this explainer. What actually happens when the very physics our world is built on begin to change their behavior? Because outside Winter's window, the green fire of the aurora australis wasn't behaving normally either. For just a fraction of a second, those glowing curtains of light stopped rippling. They bent at these sharp angles no aurora should ever hold. A straight, almost architectural line, a node forming right there in the sky. It's a huge clue that something far more deliberate than a simple magnetic collapse is happening here. It really makes you ask, what happens when the planet's invisible shield becomes a cage? Or a receptor?
To put into perspective why this absolutely terrified the scientific community, you have to look at the speed. Earth's magnetic poles flip naturally, sure, but it's a process that usually unfolds comfortably over tens of thousands of years. This event? We're talking about a 6.3% deviation from the baseline in just 3 weeks. That's like watching a mountain completely erode in an afternoon. It's a near vertical freefall. And to make matters worse, the field isn't just weakening evenly, it's fragmenting. These transient, localized magnetic poles are just randomly forming and collapsing all across the globe.
Now, the so what here is absolutely crucial, because this fragmentation destroys the invisible dependencies that hold up modern civilization. When the magnetic shield weakens and twists like this, GPS doesn't just get a little glitchy, it fails completely as solar radiation fries the satellites. Aviation routes turn into deadly hazards. And honestly, the most dangerous part? Our power grids become critically vulnerable to geomagnetically induced currents. We're talking massive, invisible electrical surges straight from space that just obliterate our transformers. We're looking at continent-scale grid failures, mass displacement, and a total, cascading breakdown in food and medical logistics, a true macro-level systems collapse. Let's move on and look at how this rapidly evolved into an ideological conflict over human survival.
Because as we've seen throughout history, a crisis of this magnitude immediately becomes a battleground for control. On one side, you have GEARD. This is an international humanitarian effort spearheaded by scientists like Dr. Chen, and they're operating on a platform of transparency, cooperation, and shared resources. On the other side, there's the Dawn Coalition, led by Kamal al-Rashid. Kamal's strategy is entirely different. It's bloodless, heavily calculated, and hyper-organized. As he's watching this collapse unfold on his high-tech bunker displays, his goal isn't to destroy the world's emergency infrastructure. No, he wants to hijack it. He operates on the philosophy that in a crisis, true authority belongs to whoever is handing out the bread and controlling the power. He is actively engineering dependency.
Let's break down the exact 4-step methodology the Dawn Coalition uses to execute this massive, systems-level takeover from the shadows. Step 1. Acquisition. For 18 months prior, they secretly bought up minority stakes in regional power distributors and vital supply chain links. Step 2. Substitution. They swapped out the recommended hardened grid components for counterfeits. These were specifically designed to pass standard tests, but intentionally fail under magnetic stress. Step 3. Delay. Sabotaging official medical and water caches to literally force the public to rely on their private stores. And finally, Step 4. Movement. Hijacking civilian evacuation corridors with fake routing updates to herd desperate people directly into their controlled zones.
And this elaborate trap springs the exact moment a coronal mass ejection, a massive solar storm, hits the Earth's weakened magnetosphere. The energy just pours right through the gaps in our planetary shield. Across the entire eastern seaboard, those counterfeit transformers instantly rupture under the surging currents. Half a continent is plunged into total darkness in a matter of seconds. And right then, under these glowing, unnatural auroras, the Dawn Coalition activates their fake emergency routing through hacked channels. They isolate the official safe zones and turn this global pandemonium into their own private monopoly.
But let's zoom back in from Kamal's digital bunker to the actual human scale for a minute, because, well, data models rarely account for sheer human stubbornness. Welcome to Safe Zone Bravo, tucked away in the Blue Ridge Mountains. This is a continuity storage facility buried deep behind granite and heavy blast doors, and it's being managed by Colonel David Chen. It was originally meant to hold logistics, but right now, it's holding 6,000 terrified civilians. The reality on the ground here is messy, it's analog, and it honestly smells intensely of wet concrete, canned soup, and pure human exhaustion.
And what's amazing is how this boots-on-the-ground human resilience perfectly counters the Dawn Coalition's expectation of total panic. Down at Bravo, the smart grids are dead. They've been replaced by chalkboards, human runners, and hand-cranked radios. And the civilians aren't just sitting around waiting to be saved. They are actively organizing themselves, literally walking around with strips of tape on their shirts, identifying their skills. MED for medical, ENG for engineer, cook. Families are pooling their rations. There's even this injured stray dog named Admiral Pancake who has organically taken on the crucial job of calming the terrified kids, arguably making him the most important commanding officer in the whole bunker. Kamal's models predicted disorder and total dependency, but instead, humanity just improvised and built a community based on trust.
Now, as you can imagine, this kind of community resilience is completely unacceptable to Kamal's enforcer. He's a brutal tactician named Hassan al-Bakri. Hassan quickly loses patience with Kamal's slow, bloodless strategy of engineered dependency. For Hassan, a crisis isn't about replacing authority with logistics, it's about raw property and brute force. So in a completely rogue escalation, defying Kamal's overarching strategy entirely, Hassan decides to launch a massive manual siege on the mountain. He wants to make a very violent example out of Safe Zone Bravo.
And the conflict immediately turns into a gritty, high-contrast battle. Hassan actually sends armed fighters, disguised as civilian relief convoys, to breach Bravo's Gate 4. It devolves into this incredibly violent clash of concrete, smoke, and blood. You have civilians hiding behind blast doors while the defenders desperately try to hold the line against highly trained mercenaries. It's a terrifying micro-level conflict. It's humanity fighting itself over a lifeboat in the absolute dark.
But right as the battle for Safe Zone Bravo reaches its absolute breaking point, the sky literally demands everyone's attention. Above the mountain, and actually across the entire globe, the auroras just stop rippling. The chaotic green and violet curtains of light snap into sharp, angular geometries. Straight, architectural lines of light are passing straight down through the rock of the mountain itself. And back at the South Pole, Dr. Winters realizes with awe, and, let's be honest, absolute dread, that the magnetic field isn't collapsing and breaking. Actually, scratch that. It's more like he realizes it is being purposefully rebuilt.
And this brings us to the absolute mind-bending cosmic twist of this explainer. The Earth isn't yet suffering some random geological event. It is being actively transformed. Those temporary poles and all that fragmentation we saw, they were just the joints of a new architecture. Our planet's magnetic field is literally being rewired into a planetary-scale magnetic lattice. It's essentially turning Earth into one massive receptor antenna. And Safe Zone Bravo, with its 6,000 terrified, fighting, hoping humans, happens to be sitting directly on one of the active convergence nodes of this brand new global machine.
Suddenly, the convergence completes, and it brings exactly 8 seconds of total, impossible planetary silence. No radios are transmitting. No engines are turning. Even the wind seems to stop. Inside the smoke-filled tunnels of Safe Zone Bravo, the pale geometric lines of this lattice glow right through the solid stone. Weapons completely fail to fire. The combatants are just bathed in this unnatural light, and the sheer cosmic scale of what is happening forces Hassan's mercenaries to just drop their guns. The violence simply stops.
In the immediate aftermath, the board changes entirely. Seeing the failure of his predictive models and confronted with the sheer reality of this planetary event, Kamal al-Rashid actually dumps his own hidden ledgers onto the emergency channels, exposing and fracturing the Dawn Coalition. With human resilience and planetary physics colliding like this, Hassan's rogue assault is completely defeated. Safe Zone Bravo holds its ground. The entire geopolitical human war over power and logistics is fundamentally interrupted. It's just completely dwarfed by the undeniable presence of this massive new planetary architecture.
But the explainer doesn't end with mere survival. Fast forward 3 weeks later at the Highland Observatory.
Dr. Sarah Chen and her team are monitoring the stable, low hum of Earth's new magnetic lattice. And then they see it. It's not static. It's not natural cosmic noise. A deliberate, repeating, intelligent modulation appears in the planetary carrier wave. The circuit has been completed, and a definitive signal is now actively pulsing through our world's new magnetic network.
Something out there has used Earth to complete a circuit, or perhaps it's just noticed that our circuit is finally online. For all of human history, we have been throwing signals into the dark, wondering if anyone was listening, right? Well, now the silence has changed shape. The world has literally become an instrument, and the very first note has just sounded. So as the Earth waits for the reply, the real question is, are we ready for whatever speaks next?